Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Always Be Testing podcast. I'm your host, Ty DeGrange, and I'm really excited to have Emma Mondolino with us today. Hi, Emma. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. We've had some really great conversations. It's been, a time and a process to finally connect and record, and here we are. We're doing it, so it's gonna be fun.
I agree. I feel like we're close friends at this point. You've been with me through some real changes over the past few months.
I know, and maybe we'll delve into all that fun stuff for sure. There's going to be some good learnings. Emma's been through all kinds of interesting marketing situations, leadership tests, experiments, growing businesses. So I think this is going to be a fun episode. One that I think y'all are going to listen to and learn a lot from. Emma, just to kind of kick it off, like on the personal level, tell us a little bit about your growing up. Where did you grow up?
Sure. It's one of my favorite things. It's something I'm very proud of. So I am a born and raised New Yorker. I'm a little bit of an interesting story in the sense that I grew up in the NYU bubble. And what I mean by that is my dad was an NYU professor. And so NYU really owns a huge amount of everything below 14th Street. They have a really incredible program with NYU housing. And so I grew up on Bleecker Street in the middle of the village and was very much a city kid. I did end up leaving to go to high school in the suburbs, so ended up in Westchester, but kind of got the best of all of the worlds between that. So always New York,
Wow.
always curious, and always running around.
I love it. It's feels relevant to the pod. I'm a huge fan of the city and spent some great times there. What was it like? I mean, growing up there, maybe like versus what you found with other observations of friends and peers and cohorts. Like, what was that like? What did you like about it?
New York definitely gives you your independence fast. And I think it also forces your parents to kind of get with the program really quickly. The thing is, you go outside and you are, in front of everything that's happening. You get introduced to all walks of life. You get introduced to new sounds and new noises, probably new germs. Who knows what I ate at playgrounds when I was younger? But all sorts of things. And I think I had an added benefit of my mom is from Germany and my dad's from New Zealand. And so they were these two
Wow.
immigrant transplants in the middle of New York with this kid. And so they also were kind of exploring as I was. They gave me a ton of freedom. So I was really like Soho was a little bit of a playground where I was going and exploring, probably in retrospect a little bit too young. But I think it really gave me a lot of curiosity and independence growing up. I think there's rarely have I traveled somewhere, if anywhere, that I felt uncomfortable or unsure. It kind of gives you that grit, I think, being from around New York.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I can certainly see that. Um, and then how did you get into marketing?
I've always loved storytelling. So, one more piece on my parents, but I think it plays in. Mom was a psychiatrist and dad was a professor. So, I grew up around a couple of people who were always in some way narrating and helping people understand something, whether it was themselves or academia. And so, I think that was really stuck with me at all times as it was. Then there was the curiosity piece. I just always have been curious and have always wanted to understand a little bit more about something. I would put myself definitely as a generalist, and someone that knows a little about a lot is probably my wheelhouse. And that has always been that way. When I was in college, I was super curious about all of the different courses, started in business school, decided very quickly I liked the creative side more than the number side. I do realize they need to go together, but was definitely drawn to one. And then just got so into the media space and understanding storytelling above all else. So I think really that I think my love language is gifting and understanding people. And so that's what marketing does, right? On a really broad scale is you are gifting a story, a version of something, telling something. And so it seemed like the perfect place to jump into.
That's awesome. I love that kind of storytelling and being empathetic, kind of thinking about what the individual, the audience, the buyer, the prospect, etc. is looking for, needing. It makes a ton of sense. You kind of alluded to the big change in the intro, like we've been talking. Can you maybe share the exciting news with the audience of what you're working on now?
Sure. So, as of about 6 weeks ago, I have officially joined Medialink. So, a media consultancy, and definitely a little bit of a change from where I've been in the past. I was at Nextdoor for 7 years prior, Pinterest, Twitter, Condé Nast, Zoom Media, a handful of other places before that. But 7 years, we were just saying, is really a while, especially when you throw a quick pandemic in there. Really excited about the change. I think so much time in social has taught me a ton, but really wanted to mix something up. And on that storytelling front, MediaLink is a phenomenal place that connects so many different types of organizations, people, businesses, and the folks that work here have really tremendous backgrounds across the board. So for me, it's really the opportunity to market a services company. And I think that's something that's a little bit different, but very cool. And I'm excited. It's been a really tremendous first few weeks.
That's amazing. I have a feeling we'll have a lot of notes to share in marketing a services business and talking about all the things. That's very cool, and it's certainly new, but I know there'll be more. That's amazing. You've obviously had some really good experiences. Just kind of flipping the order around a little bit. Obviously we talked a little bit about your Twitter experience. How did that kind of evolve for you, and what were some of the learnings that you were able to gather there?
Yeah, so Twitter, I joined back in 2011 ish, and Twitter was definitely smaller, and it was still called Twitter at the time. And it was a really, really great experience for me. I have really enjoyed everywhere that I've worked, but Twitter, beyond all else, really taught me what a great culture can be. I still both look up to and call a handful of folks from there that I worked with my closest friends. I just loved working with them so much. And I think what was being built there at the time was different than anything I knew that existed. And the main part of that was that there was definitely sellers that I was closest to, always based in New York. And so it was a predominantly sales organization there when I joined. But also, it was still a little bit of the start of social exploding. And so it was figuring out what was being sold. There was ads, but you had this opportunity to be cool in this new format. So you had 140 characters, but how to get really creative with that. So when I started, I was in a junior role as basically the version of a sales marketing manager, helping with sales collateral and sales support, and then ended up joining and helping build the beginning of their brand strategy team that became Twitter Next. And what they did always stuck with me. It was a team that was very much marketing focused in the sense that it was building stories, creating big ideas for brands, a little bit in-house agency, in-house creative agency, but also they were selling because ideas only happened if they were sold through to clients. So in that way, it wasn't a marketing organization because it had to be client related, client fueled, and client paid for, frankly. And so it was big ideas for brands. And before that, I thought that only existed at creative agencies building campaigns, but this wasn't building campaigns. It was elevating campaigns or bringing them further. So it was really this first taste for me of how marketing and revenue could work together and how you could do really cool things on platform. And that stuck with me, I think, for pretty much every job that I've had since.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. It sounds like that was a pretty foundational experience, and the learnings have really carried over into other areas, certainly.
It was, and it was one that we made it seem so easy when I was there. I came to learn later, marketing goals and revenue goals are very different. So when you have two competing forces, they are tough in figuring out what you're supposed to prioritize. And I think that you need a leadership team that really believes in that type of an organization, and or you really need to set up a business case for why it makes sense. And I feel very well versed in doing that at this point after a couple of runs at it, but
Yeah,
it's a special type of team to build.
I love it. After that, you had an opportunity to go to Pinterest, and what a cool, interesting business, and so many levels. You're kind of progressing into that just great explosion of social. Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the learnings and takeaways from that experience.
Yeah, Pinterest, I still think is one of the coolest products. I think they don't hype this up enough. I still will. The search functionality on Pinterest that allows you to search based on an image. So you find a pin of something you like and then you zoom in on it, or you take a picture of anything in the wild and having it give you all search results in pins and images, I think is incredible. When they first rolled it out, I thought it was better than Google's. I still do, actually, mostly because it's giving you a collection of things, not just image searches. It's actually all of these links that you're going to. And so I think I'm still forever in awe of that part of Pinterest. Beyond that, I do think it's a really cool platform in terms of it being kind of this collision of search and social and sharing, but also really showing personality. The data and insights piece is very cool, being able to really predict trends based on actions that people are taking. And for me, there personally, I went into a much more traditional marketing role. So it was very much setting up vertical marketing. At the time, they were very focused on retail and CPG. Makes plenty of sense. And then ultimately, there was a push for me to move to San Francisco, always New York, forever and ever. So wanted to stay. And the only option then was to actually shift into a true sales role. So I was in a true sales role covering retail. And I am so happy that that push came. I think the best marketers are sellers, the best sellers are marketers, and you to do that you really have to be in both roles. A sales role, if you are lucky, is great and never has heartbreak, but I think most sales roles are constant roles of heartbreak. You are constantly reaching out, constantly pushing. You think something's really great and you constantly need to be going and reproving and reproving. And that can be exhausting. And sometimes marketers forget that they are have their sales counterparts on the front line. So I think it was a great experience to really have both in one building.
Yeah, and working with such really impressive retail clients at Pinterest, were there some kind of aha moments or counterintuitive learnings that maybe popped up for you when working with some of these great brands? I mean, some of the brands are like, off the charts, you know, classic retail, Dick's Sporting Goods, Toys R Us, Lowe's. Like, was there something that kind of maybe you could draw from that was maybe notable, that's shareable, that's not top secret intel that we could learn?
Yeah, I think for retailers specifically, the idea of creativity, I think, is always interesting. So you mentioned some of the ones I worked with, Lowe's, Toys R Us, Dick's Sporting Goods, are all very similar businesses in some ways, right? They have brick and mortar, they have online. Their goal is ultimately drive sales. Their target audiences might be a bit different, but generally they're in the same space. And one of the things that they also share is that the model for retail is pretty standard, right? Like you understand what the goals are, but the way that the landscape has shifted into e-com and all of the different touch points to buy something has forced all of them to get really creative. And so each of them, especially having Pinterest as a backdrop, I got to really see how they think about creativity. And I think really pulled that to the forefront. Toys R Us is one that has gone back and forth a little bit on their financials at times, not confidential. And
Yeah.
I think even through that, seeing how they would handle a holiday season, and it was when I was there, it was kind of the start of unboxing videos being the thing. And so seeing how they really jumped into that and thought about that, and then that kind of catapulted them into the influencer space versus someone like a Lowe's who also was working with video, but so into the DIY space and trying to be at the forefront of that. They were always doing kind of the newest and latest and really trialing it and trying to get ahead of Home Depot that way. And so I think just across the board with the retailers, especially for being sort of antiquated industries in some ways, I found that they were always really keen and open to whatever the newest creative format was and really wanted to test.
Yeah, talk about the namesake of the pod and so central to growth and performance marketing. I recall collaborating with your team a lot in terms of trying to get ModCloth kind of opened up to more and interesting opportunities, and there was already some exciting overlap there. So that was my frame of reference. As you imagine, I wasn't a Pinterest power user, but it was always an impressive platform. It was always one that I held in high regard. It was always fun to see it grow and improve, and it's great learnings from those some really interesting big retailer brands. Um, and then the more recent before your new experience, which sounds amazing, excited to dive more into that. but Nextdoor, another one where we had some interesting shared experiences. But I'm excited to hear maybe a little bit about your learnings that are most recent in terms of being head of marketing for Nextdoor Create.
Yeah. Oh, where to start? So I think with Nextdoor, when I joined, it was much smaller than it is now. A lot changed in 7 years, but the core of the platform and the business always stayed the same. Where there was always a goal to connect neighbors and then really see where that goes. Whether that is that you needed something, you needed to sell something, you needed help and support in a dire situation, or you were looking to build community. And for me at the time when I joined, what was the most intriguing is that it was a really big social network, right? Based on number of users, even when I joined, it had a huge trajectory and plenty going on, but it broke that into individual neighborhoods. So you would have the opportunity to really connect online and social to offline and in real life touch points. This is pre pandemic. And I think pre and post pandemic both meant different things, but equally interesting to really be able to connect people. And I think with Twitter, Pinterest, Meta, whatever the case is, you can live completely online. And I think for Nextdoor, the fact that it could connect online and offline and also keep us in reality was really, really interesting to me. When I started, it was to kick off sales marketing and really think about originally, they thought it was big ideas for brands. We were not ready for that when I first joined. I think we were still really sorting out what we were doing with ads. And then that grew. I had amazing opportunities there to really touch a slew of different teams, ultimately pulling together in some form sales marketing, product marketing, working really closely with insights, looking at the international expansion side of things, brand marketing, just across the board. The core team that we ultimately built was called Create and went right back to those Twitter roots, which it was a team that had both strategists focused on big ideas for brands, as well as a sales marketing group focused on the overall narrative and vertical insights and real sales support. And it was a fabulous team. They worked incredibly well together. And I think everybody was able to really create, everyone forgive me for the marketing speak, a flywheel of sales marketing, kind of getting input from the strategists who were out in market and saying, this does work, this doesn't work. And being able to give them that kind of feedback even before they went to the sales team, and by default making everything just that much better once it actually got out to market. And so that part of it was really, really cool, and I was really proud of the work that that team did. So much of the storytelling that we did really ended up starting with what was B2B, but really becoming B2C because the story was the same across the board. So that, in a hopefully somewhat concise nutshell, I think
Yeah.
was the journey at Nextdoor.
No, that's amazing. I appreciate all that. It's there's so much there, and I mean, gosh, talk about a great hit list of social marketing, sales, team experience, and kind of that explosion of social, and as it's grown and evolved over time, it's kind of amazing. So exciting to kind of now think about you're flipping over to the service, the consultancy side. How are you thinking about that transition, and what are some ideas or thoughts that you have?
Yeah. So 7 years anywhere is a long time. It's funny. My husband is in finance and he thinks it's crazy that we in the tech and media space kind of jump as often as we do, but you're growing and building and kind of on to the next. It's just a very different industry. So to sit still for that long was really special, I think. And also, I was ready for the next adventure. I had kind of grown and built the team, and I'd love to believe that they really, really need me, but they seem to be doing okay. So as I was thinking about what was next, I really felt like I had done a lot in the social space. I was really interested in brands. I think the sports space is getting really compelling. I think that franchises and teams are acting more and more like brands. Brands are working on way cooler partnerships than they used to. So I was looking into that space a little bit. I was looking into hospitality. I think in that side, I was getting a little closer to services and people, and I definitely wanted to keep that part. But more than anything, I knew I wanted to build a story and a narrative and have something that was maybe not fully startup-y again, but really needed a lot of change, flex, and really figure out what their story was. And so when I started talking to Medialink, we spent a long time chatting about what this role would be, which in and of itself was exciting. There's nothing better than getting to really have some say in what you'll do. I just thought that telling the story of a consultancy and people services business that is incredibly well known around the industry, but depending on who you talk to for many different things. Some people trust and know Medialink for the consultancy side, some for events, some for people connections, some just know that it's a company they should be in touch with. And so MediaLink is known, but I think that they have a real opportunity to brand. And to be able to come in and really help with that was what was the most compelling. And like I said, I'm so proud of this create team that I had helped build at Nextdoor. They were effectively services. It was internal services.
Yeah.
And so this was being able to do that, but at a much broader scale and really bring that externally.
Yeah.
And the challenge of services versus product, right? And so I think all of that was really incredibly compelling.
Yeah. And all businesses have challenges. A lot to be said about service businesses and their challenges. We've lived and breathed it personally, and it's not easy. But when it's done well, when you're positioned the right way, when you have the right structures in place, it can also be um, almost like baked in job security. And I think there's obviously vast changes coming in the market, from AI to cost constraints to the economic changes that we're coming out of, to the explosion of being able to build software, more inexpensively, to people always chasing that profit margin of software and product. But I think there's something to be said for service done well and done right, and it's not easy, but we certainly take a lot of pride on our side, and it sounds like you'll be able to bring a lot of really great um, insights and learnings to that team and to those clients.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting for those reasons. And one of the things that you mentioned that was also one of the things I'm most excited about, everything that's going on in the industry, the teams that MediaLink is a part of. They have people that have both worked in or been following the AI space forever. Retail media networks, finance media networks, everything that's currently building up or kind of at the forefront is something that they're thinking about because they are working with the biggest clients, brands, partners, platforms, everyone across the board. And so for me too, selfishly, what better access to everything that's happening in the industry than being able to sit in the middle of this organization and say, tell me what you're hearing. Let me bring it together and package it into stories for us to bring forward and prove the value of the people that we have while getting to absorb through osmosis from the smartest people that are at the forefront of all of this. So for me, it's super cool. And in addition, knowing and from speaking with them and from having worked with them in the past, knowing they really are what I consider the best of the best was a no brainer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I feel like, we've seen so many learnings recently around you talk about celebrities, talk about the opportunity with sports. We're seeing that really kind of grow and evolve and get more exciting, interesting from our world, being, you know, recruiting and finding great partners and affiliates and influencers for leading innovative brands like that. The data is really showing so much value, and so here you guys are trying to unlock that too is really interesting. Where there's just there's a tailwind happening where brands are realizing that like they can't just market themselves like they have in the past. Obviously, they are heavily trying to figure out how do they leverage existing customers to tell their story, friends and family to tell their story, celebrities in sports to tell their story. So there's so much of that we're seeing. Um, Excited to hear kind of what you learn as you get up to speed around that topic, because we're 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 in it right now, and tapping into those celebrity and sports and influencers a lot for every one of our clients.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, MediaLink is a UTA company, so United Talent Agency, and being able to have that connection is another piece of it that is very cool. They are at their core a talent agency, and they are looking at representing and covering talent specifically in the media and entertainment space, but that goes across a vast amount of different industries. And having that connection to a consultancy like Medialink is also really powerful because the recommendations to both the content and creator space, to the celebrity space, the sports space, it really connects everything together. And so I think there's something really interesting as they continue to really intertwine and figure out where things go next. It's just an even cooler part of that business. And then to your point too of, where do these brands go? The other part of it is we were talking about how in my past I've influenced big ideas for brands. This is both what brands do externally and what they do internally. How do they actually build? Do they bring creative studios in house more often? How does AI play in? What should be in the building? How do they structure? How should there be more marketing and revenue joint teams, or does that actually not work? I think being able to also influence internal structure and what they then do externally, or what partnerships look like, while actually also doing that inside our own walls, is very cool and something that I'm really excited to jump into. I can say I am, it's my favorite coin phrase, but happily overwhelmed 6 weeks in and realizing how much there is and how much opportunity. Um, yeah, I'm just really excited to see what will happen here next.
That's awesome. Definitely a lot more for us to talk about. Seems like a lot of opportunity to collaborate and overlap and benefit each other and help each other out.
You'll have
And
to
yeah,
call me back
excited.
in 6 months. Who knows how much I'll know by then?
That sounds like a plan. Part two of the pod. Speaking of that, shifting gears a little bit, getting into more Emma personally. What's an item that you've got recently that you've purchased that you're just like raving about, recommending to people that you want to share?
So I'm going to say the first one that came to mind, and we'll see if I regret that later. Dyson is doing phenomenal things for hair. I'm sure they have great vacuums. I don't know. I don't own one of them, but they have the hair space is the best. They have something called the Air Straight, I think, which for anyone that watches the video, I'm a walking model of it right now. It is a phenomenal blow dryer that straightens your hair, and it can do it in 10 minutes. As
Wow.
someone who spends a ton of time on and off of a plane where you're trying to look like you just made it through and smooth sailing and you weren't at a 3 a.m. wake up call. It's a magical tool. So that I think is my latest one that I am thrilled with.
I love that. We talked about it a little bit, just kind of chit chatting to kick off, but and then this is kind of put you on the spot, but you're nailing it so far. Is there any like software business tool that you're like, oh man, this is my fave, can't live without it, recommend it to people?
I am thinking about this one on the fly too. So maybe this is taking it a little bit differently, but I'm really impressed by all of the different AI tools. I for one don't I'm not one of the ones that sees them as a threat. I think they've made my job significantly easier. I don't think that I now don't need to hire people. I still absolutely need to hire people, and I need them to know the tools even better than I do because I think they'll just make productivity go even faster. But I think for me, just really messing around with ChatGPT and beyond has been such a game changer personally.
Yep.
So I feel like that was a lame answer on that one, but I found that to be really phenomenal. And then we were joking about this before. I have been a Gmail and Google person for the last over 15 years of my career. And so I am newly in Outlook, and I have a new appreciation for the lovely people that put up tutorials on YouTube and give you really slow and explained versions of what all of the different tips and tricks are. And if you used to organize your Gmail like this, do this. I feel seen. I think they really get it. So just some of the basics right now in my first few weeks have been the ones I'm going back to.
I love it. What a great shout out to the influencers and the creators and the educators.
Everyone is talking about content creation. I'm just trying to figure out how to use Outlook properly and get my tips and tricks back.
I mean, sometimes it's the little things, it matters. I love it. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to, or is there a thought or coaching advice you've received that is just notable that you want to share in the form of like a mentor or a colleague or a manager that's just been instrumental, or maybe just someone that's been positive impact on your professional career in marketing?
Oh, there's so many. Um, Okay, all of the thoughts are colliding. I think first and foremost, because I don't get many places to do this, the team that I had and that was all part of Create within Nextdoor really trusted me with some crazy ideas sometimes, and also were just so tight knit together. Erica Bayevsky was one of my original strategists and then partnered with a guy named Tim Carpenter. And that entire team is now run by Sharnaz Shifta. So I will shout out those guys for sure. Caitlin Parada and Vicky Service are also on their team. And Marissa Lieberman left us a little bit ago, but she still counts. So I really do think that that team is phenomenal. And what makes them so great is they are all empathetic, patient, resilient, and just have a certain amount of trust. I think to build a really great marketing team, you need to take risks and you need to trust a team to do that with you. So I think on that side, just a shout to them because I can. On the flip side of that, the former CMO of Nextdoor is a woman named Miriam Banikaram, who many folks who are listening have probably worked with or come in contact at some point. Miriam is one of the most creative folks that I know. And I think she is one of the women, especially, that has taught me that you can have really creative and crazy ideas. And as long as you have people around you that you trust and that trust you, you will make some version of those happen. She talks maybe even faster than I do. So there's ideas just coming at all times, but really just a total inspiration there. And so I think she's one that I always look to. And then two more, you gave me this opening, but they're great people to follow. And I've told them before, and I don't know if they always believe me, so I'll do it here. Two from Twitter, Robin Wheeler and Jen Prince, are two just badass women that are so unapologetically themselves. And I have stolen from them their presentation styles, who they are. They have a feminine approach to things, but at the same time are people that you wouldn't mess with and take seriously quickly. And I think that is something that has really stuck with me and I think served me incredibly well.
Wow, that's an amazing answer, especially put on the spot, Emma. That's awesome, and I think kind of paying that forward and just calling out those folks that have been so collaborative and awesome to help inform your career and learnings is just a great thing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. We're coming down the home stretch, just wrapping up. Emma, I mean, it's been an amazing conversation, tons of learnings, jam packed.
I'm
What's
so
something maybe?
grateful you let me call out so many folks. I never get the chance to do that.
Oh, it's awesome. What's something that maybe folks don't know about Emma?
So I think I am an oversharer in so many ways. So many people know the fun facts about me. Things like I come in at 4'11", and I have raced cars as hobbies on the side. The background of my parents. There's lots of fun facts. I'm an onion in a good way. I was thinking about one that people don't know, and it's a little bit silly, but goes to the marketing front. I have a dog. I think many of us are very, very attached to our furry friends, and we all believe in some form for anyone that has a dog or any pet that they definitely have a personality. It's unreal that they don't actually speak to us. And so, a kind of very long time dream that I have had is I would love to publish. It could be a children's book. I'm thinking more coffee table book esque, but a book that is about dogs and their professions. So deciding for a dog what they do. I think many times I have walked the dog and I'll pass by another dog and I'm like, oh, they're a dentist. They're definitely a bodyguard. They're a lawyer. I think you can assign personalities to them. And I think there would be a really fun book there. So something that I have not confessed very often, but I think when things slow down one day,
Yeah,
you might see my first book publication as something of that
yeah.
variety.
I encourage it. I think it's a great idea. I'm a big pet lover too, so go for it. That's amazing. What now? I have to ask, what is your dog's profession?
So I go back and forth. I think that he is an academic. I think that he was a professor of some sort. He's very, very curious about kind of sniffing different things, and he seems to have real patterns. But I think that's because I
Yeah,
know him so well. If I didn't know him that well, I think someone would pass by and see him, and I think they would think that he runs a bakery. I think he looks like a baker. I think That's what the outside world would
Yeah.
think.
Looks like a baker, but is actually a professor of like
I hope I
economics.
didn't just lose all credibility with folks. I did
Well,
mention that you have to have a great imagination to be a great storyteller.
it goes back to the storytelling ability of marketing. It's very important. Emma, you hit a home run today. It was a blast. It's exceeded all expectations. For folks that want to learn more about all things Emma, where can they find you?
I think LinkedIn is always a great place. You get to see both professional, and I feel like it's becoming more and more personal, but it's a very, very easy
Yeah,
place to find me. So I think that's the best spot.
that's great. And since your dog has a profession, you could actually talk about and show pictures of your dog on LinkedIn because it's a professional network, and you could talk about his profession or her
This could be
profession.
for anyone out there that wants to code it for me. That could be the continuation. It could be the book plus it's like
Yeah,
LinkedIn for dogs. You could have there's an entire fantasy land there to be built up.
a metaverse of dogs. All right, we'll talk about that on part two.
Thanks so much. This was so much fun.
Thanks, Emma. Bye.
Appreciate it.